welcome to the Art of Being Human. We've been talking about how a child individualizes, and by that I mean how they become aware of themselves as a person by themselves, not attached to another person. Well, I want to tell you a little story of how I interacted with a lady and her baby in a store just a couple days ago. I went into this big box store, and this woman, I think a woman and her mother, had about a 1-year-old baby that they were carrying. Now, the baby was delightful. She was just real wonderful, grinning and laughing, and it was just a totally wonderful experience. And I noticed, I talked with them, and I said, "Is she walking yet?" And they said, "No, she's not quite 1. She's not walking yet, but she's crawling a lot." The other thing I noticed that the baby was doing with his hands, he was looking at the fingers, I think it was a she, and had the fingers, and she's moving the fingers of both hands. Now, these are very, very good signs for child development. It seems simple enough for the mother that she's crawling and that she's moving her fingers, but this is very important. And so I talked with her a little bit about it. There is a link between the movements that a baby makes and brain development. And they can cue, in a sense, without even knowing that they're doing it, when they're crawling, one hand, one leg, one hand, one leg. They're moving both sides of their body. And when they move both sides of their body, one at a time, they actually trigger growth in the brain that'll help them to read later. There are some children who have a lot of trouble reading, and a lot of those children did not crawl. Or if they did crawl, it was just for a short period of time. And in some children, they didn't crawl at all. They went from being sedentary to suddenly standing up and walking. But crawling is very, very important, because if they're crawling, then they're triggering the brain to develop in such a way that that helps them to learn how to read. Excuse me 1 second. So you have to realize how important that is. And the other thing the baby was doing was this business with her fingers. They just thought it was a cute little thing. But I told them, you know, what happens is the child is learning that they have some control over their own bodies. If they look at their hands and they move their hands, this is fascinating to them, because this is new knowledge. They didn't know they could do it before. It's long been thought, and it may be true, but I can't prove it, that young children, infants, newborns, think of themselves as being attached to the person who takes care of them. But it would make some sense if you look at it from this point of view, and I don't know how it ever can be proved, but if you look at it from this point of view, the baby is hungry, he cries, mom comes and feeds. The baby is uncomfortable, he cries, mom comes, changes him, puts him in a different position, takes a blanket off if he's cold. It takes a blanket off if he's too hot, puts a blanket on if he's too cold. Now, children do not have much knowledge about temperature, and they don't really read temperatures very well, so they don't know whether they're hot or whether they're cold, and that doesn't come for a few years. But at any rate, whatever the baby cries about, mom is there to take care of him. So why wouldn't he think that he's attached to the mother? Well, maybe he does, but we don't know that for sure. But later on, he becomes aware of the fact he can move his body by himself. He can move his fingers, and he spends hours of time. A lot of babies do this. This is not unusual. They spend a lot of time watching their fingers move, and they're amazed by the fact that they themselves are doing it. Now, that can't be verbalized. They're not old enough to talk about it. But what they're sensing is they have power in the sense that they can move parts of their body by themselves. So when a baby is crawling, and she said that the baby is crawling a lot, That means they're developing the brain structures that'll help them to read, and also developing that sense of independence that they are their own person. They move their own bodies. So this is a very, very fortunate child. She's making all of her markers and she's doing very well. So we had a very good conversation about that, and I thought it was interesting to bring it in because this is basically what we have been discussing anyway. How does a child get to learn who they are? Now, sometimes when a child has problems reading, they will have exercises. Therapists will come in and do exercises with them to move their arms and their legs so that even though they're laying down, and 2 or 3 therapists have to do this at the same time, it usually can't be done by one person, they're laying down, but their legs and arms are being moved in such a way as to mimic what the crawling motions would be if they were crawling. The purpose of that is to trigger the brain into developing areas that haven't been developed because they didn't crawl. So you see, there is a real link between the movements that a baby makes and what their brain development is going to be. Now, a note about autistic children. Autistic children should not be watching television at all. This is what I've been told. Because there are very fast images on television, and that triggers the brain to develop in a certain way. And an autistic child will become so hooked on that they can't drag themselves away from it. So autistic children should not watch television. Babies, normal babies, should probably not watch television for the first 2 years of their life. The reason being is their brain needs to develop, and if their movements cause the brain to develop in a certain way, think of what the fast images of television, especially children's television, and I'm not mentioning any specific shows, cartoons and programs like that have very fast moving images will affect the way that the baby's brain develops. So basically, they shouldn't be watching TV for the first 2 years of their life. But I don't know how you're going to stop it unless you just don't have TV or you don't watch it. But at any rate, this is some of the current thinking about children. It's important that you realize how the babies developed and how they become independent and how they become autonomous and how they realize who they are. So you see, it's important also their movements and what that does to them. Now, let me just take another drink here. For those of you who are wondering about my voice, I had high-risk surgery. It went well. 2 high-risk surgeries within a month, and it did well. But it did damage part of the vocal cords. But the doctor says it will heal, so we just have to be patient with it. Okay. Now, as the babies grow, they learn how to talk. And it's real interesting to hear what they have to say. I'm going to quote a 4-year-old. Now, you got to remember, these children, 2 to 4, young childhood, they're trying to figure out who they are. They're trying to learn that they're independent and they're independent within themselves, but at the same time, they are learning and growing, and this is a problem with TVs, I've said before. So I want to quote a 4-year-old. He's trying to understand his individuality, and he's talking with a teacher, and he says this, "Me is my name, you know, my name." And the teacher says, "Well, me is my name, too." And the little boy who's 4 years old said, "No, it's not. It's mine. Me is me. How can you be me? I am me. You are you." And the teacher says, "Well, I am too." And the little boy says, "No, you're not me. I am me. You are you." And then he stops to think and he catches something he hadn't known before, and this is important. He said, "I am me. You are not me to me, but you are me to you." Do you understand what's happening here? I am me to me. You are me to you. You have the right to use the word me in reference to yourself, because you are me to you, I am me to me. So what he's done is he's differentiated himself from his teacher. So they both can use the word me, and they can both use the word you in reference to each other. Now, this may not seem exciting to you, but it is really exciting to me, because this is the way a child gradually learns and figures out. This is the way it is. I am me to me, but you, I talk to you, and you are me to you. In other words, you can say me, and I can say me. We're separate. So I don't want to make too much of this, but it is an important development. He said, how, you can't see your own face, can you? And he says, why do you have a long head and I have a little head? And he's trying to figure out, well, I'm little, but why am I little and you're big? That doesn't make sense to me. And so he's trying to understand growth. Now he says this is about blood. And this is also, it has to be a really intelligent child to figure all this out. But this is what he says. Sometimes I wonder about the blood in me. Inside is all wet and blood, and lots of insides, but outsides is all dry, and you would never know about the inside by looking at the outside. Not unless you got a hole in you, and some of the blood came out. All the people are like this. Their skins keep them in, but underneath their skins is such a lot. Your insides never stop. Everybody is like that. A picture that would be for you would be for me too. Then you and I are alike. You and I are alike. Now, I think that's a fabulous quote, because he's saying, I have an inside that you can't see by looking at the outside, and my skin keeps it in. But you also have an inside that you can't see by looking at the outside. And the only way you see it is to get a cut or blood comes out. Then you realize that inside is a lot of blood, both for you and for me. And it says, you and I are alike. We are exactly alike. A picture of you is a picture of me. So what he's figured out is we are two individual people. And we're like each other. We both have insides. We both have outsides. And so therefore, we're two people and we're alike. Now, I don't know if you realize this. There's not a bit of prejudice in this. He's just figured it out. Children don't think in terms of prejudice. He's not saying you're a different color than I am. He's saying we're exactly alike. So it makes you wonder how children become prejudiced. They learn it from society. They learn it from their parents. They learn it from their friends. But innately, if you leave them alone, they don't even think about it. It's not a concept that they can deal with. Their brains aren't developed enough for it. So we need to let children learn and grow and not interfere with them. Now we're dealing with preschool, which is about 2.5 years to about the first grade. It ends at about 6 years old. This is preschool development. And they are, at this period of time, trying to find their place in the world. Their individuality is more pronounced. There's more development in different directions. Young preschoolers are more like toddlers, but older preschoolers are more like school children. Early play is parallel play. I've mentioned this before. When children play with each other until their brains develop, they can interact. They may be beside each other, but they're not playing with each other. They're doing their own individual play, sitting beside somebody else who's always doing their individual play. So therefore, there's no connection between them. They just happen to be together. Later on, they go and play and have interactive play where they play with each other. Maybe they build a fort, you take the truck, I'll take the shovel, and there's some interaction, real interaction between them. But the early play is parallel play. Then their vocabulary in this period of time goes from 500 to 2,000 words. So they're growing rapidly and they're learning rapidly. They have better motor skills and they're aware of their bodies, what they can do. And the physical growth levels off. In infancy, they grow up to about up through 2 years, they grow about 15 inches. That's a lot. By the time a child has finished toddlerhood, he'll be about half the size of his adult nature when he gets to be an adult. So if you can take like a 2.5 years old, measure how tall they are, then as they approach adulthood, just double that, and you'll know about how tall they're going to get. In preschool, they grow only 9 or 10 inches, so the growth tends to level off. And they gain about 5 pounds a month. You see, as they're growing and they're adding bone and so forth, they're going to get heavier. At age 5, the head is almost about adult size, and the legs grow the fastest. Now, this is important. And I've said before, when they're tiny, the brains grow the fastest, the torso with the organs in it grows the fastest because they need that for survival and for growth. Now they've got the basic body working together, then the legs are going to take off and the arms are going to take off, and they're going to grow the fastest to catch up with what the body has already done, because now that is needed. Now, so the fat pads, about age 5, the fat pads in the cheeks dwindle, and so they lose that baby look. And they start becoming friends with people outside of their family, and the young preschoolers don't talk a lot to each other, but that increases with time. By age 5, a child can exchange information and describe events, but they get lost in the details. If you ask them something, they try to give you information about something, they're going to get lost in the details, but that's all right. At their age, that's all they can do. Well, now let's see. They start to show sympathy for others, especially those that are in distress. And I saw a 4-year-old try to comfort her mother who was drunk. She says, "I'll take care of you, Mommy." She's 4 years old. She's trying to take care of her mother who's drunk. You know, this was in another state, and it was quite a few years ago. Well, I think we're getting low on time here, so I'm going to close it for now. We'll continue next time. Please join me then.